4 hours ago, the universe stopped making sense. At 8:14 UTC on March 12, 2026, NASA's Deep Space Network recorded an event that no equation in the history of science can explain. Not a glitch, not a misreading, not a software error. A verified, triple-confirmed observation that has physicists locked in emergency sessions, governments scrambling behind closed doors, and every major space agency on Earth pointing every instrument they have at a single point in the sky. And once you understand what actually happened out there, you will never look up at the night sky the same way again. The object in question is called 3I Atlas. We have been tracking it since December 19, 2025, when it first appeared on our sensors moving at 87 kilometers per second, far too fast to be a standard Oort cloud object, clearly arriving from somewhere beyond our solar system. It was unusual from the start. A hyperbolic trajectory, interstellar origin, charcoal dark surface, with an albedo of just 0.04. NASA modeled it. ESA modeled it. JAXA modeled it. Every agency ran the numbers and came to the same conclusion. Strange, yes, but explainable. An exotic interstellar visitor, rare but not impossible. We thought we had it figured out. We were completely wrong. At 2 UTC this morning, the Deep Space Network's antenna in Madrid DSS-63 was running a routine tracking pass as 3I Atlas moved through a checkpoint near the Earth-Moon L2 Lagrange point. The telemetry was perfectly normal. Mass estimated at 4.2 billion tons, diameter 4.1 kilometers, everything exactly where the models predicted it would be. Then at 5:30 UTC, the signal flickered. Engineers initially dismissed it as receiver interference, a software hiccup, but it wasn't interference from equipment, it was interference from a second radio source transmitting on the exact same frequency, cancelling out the first signal. Two sources, occupying the same space. Then the European Space Agency's Gaia spacecraft, a precision instrument designed to measure stellar positions down to the micro-arcsecond, sent an automated gravitational alert. It had detected a wobble in the surrounding space debris, consistent not with one object, but with a binary system. Two gravitational wells where there had previously been one. At 6:45 UTC, the Vera Rubin Observatory in Chile came online for the night, swung its 8.4-meter telescope to the coordinates, and captured the image that has since been passed around every secure government channel on the planet. Not a blur. Not a debris cloud. Two perfectly distinct, solid points of light, separated by exactly 120 kilometers. Here is where physics as we know it completely breaks down. When a comet fractures, you get fragments, big pieces, small pieces, a chaotic cloud of dust and debris. Conservation of mass is non-negotiable. If a 10-ton rock splits, you get pieces that together weigh 10 tons. That is not a theory. That is the bedrock of physical law. But the data streaming in from the James Webb Space Telescope, which was immediately retasked to these coordinates, shows something that should be impossible. Object A, the original 3I Atlas, measures 4 kilometers wide with a mass of approximately 4.2 billion tons. Object B, which did not exist 6 hours ago, also measures 4 kilometers wide with a mass of approximately 4.2 billion tons. Same size. Same mass. Same density. Not a fragment. Not a piece broken off from a larger whole. A perfect duplicate, sitting silently beside the original, locked in a precise binary orbit. To put that in terms that hit home, imagine throwing a baseball, and in midair, that baseball silently becomes two baseballs, each one weighing exactly the same as the original. No explosion, no energy release, no debris, just two where there was one. That is not physics. That is not anything our science has a framework for. The probability of a natural fragmentation event producing two perfectly equal halves is roughly 1 in 400 trillion. The probability of mass spontaneously doubling of new matter appearing from nothing is not 1 in a trillion. It is not 1 in a Google. It is 0. It is flatly, categorically impossible under every physical law we have ever written. And yet, 3 independent agencies, using 3 completely different detection methods, radar from NASA's Goldstone Array, gravitational measurements from ESA's Gaia, and thermal imaging from JAXA, all confirmed the identical conclusion within a 7-minute window. We are not dealing with a measurement error. We are dealing with something that rewrites the rulebook entirely. But as staggering as the mass duplication is, it is not even the most disturbing detail of what happened this morning. because it is not just that a duplicate appeared, it is how it appeared. The separation velocity between the two objects at the moment of duplication was zero. There was no explosion, no shockwave, no heat spike, no debris field. 1 second, one object. The next second, two objects. Silent, cold, perfect. And right now, those two objects are not drifting apart the way fragments do. They are station-keeping, holding a precise 120 kilometer separation and rotating around a shared center of gravity every 48 minutes, with a synchronization that surpasses our most advanced orbital mechanics. That is not a random collision event. That is precision engineering. And whatever engineered it is still out there, less than 2 lunar distances from where you are sitting right now. Stay with me, because what happened after the duplication is where this situation crosses from astonishing into genuinely alarming. The two objects now designated 3I Atlas A and 3I Atlas B did not simply appear and sit still. They began to behave, and their behavior follows a logic that has no place in any natural process we have ever observed. When the James Webb Space Telescope's spectral data arrived at the Space Telescope Science Institute, analysts expected to see the one thing that always gives away a fragmentation event: variation. When a space rock splits, the freshly exposed interior looks different from the weathered exterior. The inside is brighter, icier, chemically distinct from the outer crust that has spent millions of years absorbing cosmic radiation. It is as reliable a signature as a broken bone. You can always see where the break happened. But the spectral analysis of 3I Atlas A and 3I Atlas B showed no such variation. The absorption lines, the elemental fingerprints of iron, magnesium, and silicate compounds matched between the two objects to within 0.000001 nanometers. That level of precision does not exist in nature. Identical twins have different fingerprints. Two rocks pulled from the same quarry have different microscopic crystal structures. But these two objects are chemically indistinguishable, down to their age markers, their surface weathering, the exact degree to which cosmic radiation has altered their outer layers over millions of years. Object B does not look like a piece of Object A. Object B looks exactly as old as Object A, as if it has been traveling through deep space for the same millions of years, collecting the same scars, absorbing the same radiation. It is not a fragment, it is a copy. A perfect, aged, weathered copy, produced in a matter of hours. My contact at Caltech described the atmosphere in the control room when this data came through as absolute silence. Because when you see something that violates the second law of thermodynamics, celebration is not your first instinct. The second law is not a guideline. It is the foundation upon which our entire understanding of cause and effect is built. Entropy, the tendency of systems to move from order to disorder, is not optional. It is universal. You can smash a crystal and get shards, but you cannot smash a crystal and get two smaller, perfect crystals. And yet that is precisely what the data is showing us. At 9:30 UTC, the high-resolution imaging science experiment aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which had a direct line of sight to the objects, captured something that pushed the situation into a completely different category. The space between Object A and Object B, the gap that should be filling with dust and debris from the gravitational interaction of two massive bodies orbiting this closely, was becoming cleaner. The dust was disappearing. In a region of space where entropy should be operating at full force, scattering material outward in every direction, the local environment was instead becoming more ordered, more structured, less chaotic. This is entropy running in reverse, and it has no natural explanation. Add to this, the thermal data. When two objects of this mass orbit each other at a separation of only 110 kilometers, tidal forces become enormous. The same gravitational stretching that turns Jupiter's moon Io into a volcanic hellscape, constantly cracking and melting its surface, should be generating measurable heat between these two objects. Instead, the infrared data from James Webb's MIRI instrument shows both objects sitting at a stable -220 degrees Celsius. No thermal increase whatsoever. Zero friction, zero tidal heating. The absence of heat in a gravitationally active system of this scale means one of only two things. Either these objects are not composed of matter in any form we recognize, or they are actively managing their own temperature, deliberately dissipating energy that should be accumulating. An active thermal management requires a power source. It requires engineering. It requires intent. Then at 10:15 UTC, both objects simultaneously rotated 45 degrees along their z-axis, together, in perfect unison. To rotate a single object with a mass of 4 billion tons requires thrust-expelling propellant in the opposite direction, exactly as Newton's third law demands. The Deep Space Network's sensors scanned for exhaust plumes, gas signatures, ion trails, any indication of propellant being expelled. There was nothing. 2 mountains worth of mass pivoted in space, without pushing against anything, without expelling anything, without consuming anything that left any detectable trace. This is not a refinement of existing propulsion technology. This is the complete absence of the physical mechanism that all propulsion requires. Whatever is moving these objects is not operating within the boundaries of the physics we teach. And then there is the question of what this rotation was for. Because at 10:45 UTC, something became clear. Object A began spinning clockwise. Object B began spinning counterclockwise, simultaneously, opposite directions. Together, they formed a gyroscope, a gravity-stabilized platform of extraordinary precision. You do not build a gyroscope by accident. A gyroscope has one purpose: to stabilize an axis, to keep something pointed in a fixed direction, regardless of external perturbation. It is the mechanism inside a missile guidance system. It is the platform beneath a precision antenna. It is the foundation of a targeting array. And the axis of the gyroscope formed by 3I Atlas A and 3I Atlas B, the direction their combined geometry locks onto and holds with unwavering precision, is pointed directly at Earth. 2 identical objects, violating conservation of mass, defying thermodynamics, maneuvering without propellant, and locking a gyroscopic axis onto our planet. That is where we were at 11 UTC this morning. What happened 14 minutes later is the detail that moved this situation from a scientific crisis into something that every government on Earth is currently treating as a matter of national security. At 11:14 UTC, the Green Bank telescope in West Virginia, which had been monitoring the electromagnetic environment between the 2 objects, detected a carrier wave. Not random noise, not the ambient hum of cosmic background radiation. A structured digital packet, deliberate and organized, emerging from the space between the 2 objects with the clarity of a broadcast. The frequency? 1.42 GHz. The hydrogen line. For decades, physicists and SETI researchers have argued that if intelligent life wanted to send a signal that any technologically capable civilization would recognize, they would use the hydrogen line, the frequency at which hydrogen atoms naturally emit radiation, the most abundant element in the universe, a shared reference point built into the fabric of reality itself. We always assumed that if we ever detected a signal on that frequency, it would be aimed at us. It was not. Object A was transmitting directly to Object B. We were not the recipients. We were eavesdroppers. What we were intercepting was a high-bandwidth data exchange between 2 machines, and the volume of data being transferred is difficult to wrap your mind around. We are talking about exabytes of information exchanged every second, more data per second than the entire global internet generates in a year. 2 objects, the size of mountains, communicating at a rate that makes our most advanced fiber optic infrastructure look like Morse code tapped on a telegraph wire. The content was encrypted and compressed, unreadable with any tool currently at our disposal. But the structure of the signal was readable, and at 11:20 UTC that structure changed. The continuous data stream shifted into a pulse pattern. Pulse, pause, pulse, pulse, pulse. A rhythmic, deliberate sequence. The interval between pulses, 3.14159 seconds. Pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, an irrational number that extends infinitely without repeating, a mathematical constant woven into the geometry of the universe itself. They were using pi as a clock cycle, structuring their communication around a universal mathematical truth. Nature does not count to pi. No geological process, no stellar event, no random physical interaction produces pi as a timing interval. This was a deliberate mathematical statement, proof, beyond any remaining shadow of doubt, that what we are dealing with possesses not just intelligence, but a command of mathematics that mirrors and may far exceed our own. And the signal was growing stronger. Every passing minute, the amplitude increased. By the time my contact at the SETI Institute provided an update 10 minutes into the broadcast, the signal strength had already surpassed the cosmic microwave background radiation in that frequency band. These 2 objects were no longer whispering to each other. They were broadcasting at full power, indifferent to whether anyone nearby was listening. Now consider what this communication implies at a deeper level. Object B is not just physically identical to Object A. If they are exchanging exabytes of data per second, they may be synchronizing something far more significant than navigation coordinates. In computing, when you link two processors together with a high bandwidth connection and synchronize their operations, you do not get two separate computers. You get one computer that is twice as powerful, processing twice the information, running twice the simulations simultaneously. Two objects of this scale, linked by what the zero-latency data transfer suggests, may be a quantum entanglement channel, would constitute a distributed computing array of almost incomprehensible capacity. A planetary-scale processing system, a networked intelligence. And at 11:30 UTC, that network's attention shifted. A side lobe of the transmission, a leakage signal, the radio equivalent of light spilling under a closed door, struck the European Space Agency's antenna array in Australia. For 0.4 seconds, the encryption dropped. A fragment of raw, uncompressed data was exposed, and analysts spent the following minutes processing what they saw. It was a star chart, but not a map of where these objects came from. It was a detailed map of our Oort cloud, the vast, distant shell of primordial ice and rock that surrounds the outer boundary of our solar system, with thousands of trajectories plotted across it. Thousands of potential targets, mapped with precision that suggests a thorough survey of resources we have barely begun to catalog ourselves. They are not here to observe us. They are here to inventory our solar system. Let us take a moment to establish, with complete clarity, what we know for certain. We have two physically identical objects, each 4 kilometers in diameter, each massing approximately 4.2 billion tons, where 6 hours ago there was only one. They violated the conservation of mass at the moment of duplication. They are maintaining a precise orbital formation without any detectable propulsion mechanism. They are generating zero thermal output despite significant gravitational interaction. They rotated in perfect synchrony without expelling propellant. They formed a gyroscopic array pointed at Earth. They are exchanging exabytes of encrypted data per second on the hydrogen line using pi as a timing interval. And they have mapped our Oort cloud with thousands of trajectories already plotted. Every single one of these observations has been independently confirmed by NASA, ESA, and JAXA using different instruments and different detection methods. These are not theories. These are documented, verified, peer-reviewed in real-time observations from the most sophisticated scientific infrastructure humanity has ever built. Now consider what framework best explains all of this data simultaneously. In 1966, mathematician John von Neumann proposed a concept that has lived mostly in the realm of theoretical physics ever since: the self-replicating probe. Von Neumann argued that the most efficient way for an advanced civilization to explore and utilize the galaxy would not be to send crewed ships too slow, too fragile, too expensive. Instead, they would send machines. Machines capable of traveling to resource-rich systems, mining raw materials, constructing copies of themselves from those materials, and dispatching those copies onward to repeat the process. Exponential expansion across the galaxy, driven not by biology, but by self-perpetuating technology. One probe becomes two, two become four, four become eight. The math is unrelenting. Within 30 replication cycles, a single original probe becomes over 1 billion, dispersed across a solar system's worth of resources. What we witnessed this morning, the silent, instantaneous duplication of a 4-kilometer object with perfect mass replication, followed immediately by the mapping of our Oort cloud's raw materials, matches the von Neumann probe model with an accuracy that is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. 3. I-Atlas arrived from interstellar space. It surveyed the local environment. It identified available resources, it replicated, and now it is surveying the next wave of raw materials, preparing to replicate again. The process that theorists assumed would take decades or centuries for a probe to complete the mining, the construction, the assembly of 4 billion tons of matter appears to have been accomplished in hours. The energy required to assemble that mass in that time frame is equivalent to roughly 50,000 megatons of TNT, the combined yield of every nuclear weapon on Earth detonated simultaneously. And yet there was no explosion, no flash, no detectable energy release of any kind. An energy conversion efficiency that approaches 100%, a figure our thermodynamic laws explicitly forbid, a violation of the Carnot limit that sits in the same category as perpetual motion. Impossible. And yet the data does not care about our categorizations. At 12 UTC, Exactly 15 minutes before this report went to air, Object B broke formation. It disengaged from the synchronized orbit, increased its velocity, and began moving outward toward the outer solar system, tracking toward a comet in the Kuiper belt, the same region of space partially charted in the intercepted data fragment. The replication phase is not a one-time event. Object B is not departing. Object B is deploying. It is heading toward the next resource deposit to begin the next construction cycle. Object A remains here, in near-Earth space, holding its position, its gyroscopic axis still locked onto our planet. One object stays behind, one object goes forward to build the swarm. And the radio telescope at Arecibo's successor facility, brought back online specifically for this situation, is already tracking a new outward-directed signal pulse from Object B, aimed not at Object A and not at Earth, but toward the outer darkness where the next raw materials wait. This is the moment that every scientist who ever stared at the sky and asked, "Are we alone?" has spent their life anticipating. And now that it is here, the answer it brings with it is more complex and more unsettling than any version we imagined. Something built this. Something sent it here. Something with a mastery of matter, energy, and self-replication so far beyond our current capability that the gap is not decades or centuries, it may be millions of years. And whatever mission parameters were loaded into 3I Atlas before it was launched into the interstellar void, it is executing them right now, 2 lunar distances away, with a precision and efficiency that suggests the outcome was calculated long before it arrived. We do not know if this is exploration, cataloging, colonization, or something else entirely, a purpose so foreign to our way of thinking that we lack the vocabulary to name it. What we know is that it has begun, it is accelerating, and it is operating on a timeline and a scale that was not designed with our awareness or our consent in mind. The universe just answered one of humanity's oldest questions, and the answer is already moving through our solar system, building more of itself in the silence between the planets. If this information matters to you, and it should, share this video right now. The people in your life need to understand what is unfolding. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because the updates coming in over the next 24 hours will change this story significantly, and you need to be here when they do. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think 3I Atlas truly is, and what should humanity do next? This conversation is just beginning.